that will be in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so as I mentioned immediately, there's a lot of things in this game involving items, so the first thing I do is just grab as many items as I can. I bring this TV remote up to this window to get light on the TV remote so I can input a password here, and this is the first instance of mashing. So this is a kind of a story-based game. There's a lot of story in this game, which means a lot of text. The fastest way to mash currently is to spam both your confirm and cancel buttons as much as possible, which in my case I use the default controls of Z and X. I did rebind one key, and the reason I did that will actually be explained later, as it is faster than leaving that key on the default position. But you saw a combination there where I picked up a plant from a bathroom and then a bottle of alcohol from a fridge. And what I did in doing that was I was able to dip the branch in the alcohol to create kind of a torch by using sparks from the TV as well. So not only can you combine two items in your inventory to create a new item, but you can also interact with certain things on the overworld while holding an item to get a different result than interacting with it with nothing in your hand. And speaking of things in our hand, we're now holding a light bulb. There's some story things that we're going to be skipping, so I'm going to just explain the significance of this light bulb now. It is going to be the world's new sun. So we were kind of brought into this world that we don't really know, but we learned quickly that it's kind of deteriorating, and it needs the sun to heal. And we have the sun with us, so it's time to bring it to the top of the tower is where the game wants us to bring it. We would learn this all if we went south from here. However, the first thing I'm going to do is go north. Because with our new ability of fast traveling, whenever I enter a screen, I get a fast travel point where I can go to the same point on every screen. So whenever I get a screen's fast travel, it'll always send me to the same point every time I fast travel to that screen, which is going to be useful. Just to make navigation quicker in areas like the Barrens, where we are right now, where backtracking is kind of a big thing throughout the whole area. So here we talk about the computer that we mentioned, and the computer that we saw, and I accidentally said no there. So there's a lot of weird things that happen in this game, but what happens in this cutscene is you actually learn that you're not necessarily playing as the character, but you're playing as the god of the world that the character was transported to. And so the game kind of makes this giant connection to the player through absolutely shattering the fourth wall and using that open gap to build character and world. So one thing it does is it'll read the user profile of, like, the name of the user profile that you're using on your computer and actually name you that in-game. I kind of messed up a bit and said no to a text prompt I wanted to say yes to, so I got to rename myself, which is slow to do. But another thing it does is, as you saw, I kind of had a dream there where I went into a bed and it closed the game. There's going to be a lot of game closing in this run. So one little thing is I have Steam on offline mode, so the game can, like, not have to worry about Steam wanting to do Steam things. And here is a super fast travel. So I mentioned that when you fast travel, you get warped to the same point on the screen. There's a set position to be fast traveled to. And in some cases, it's going to be faster to fast travel off of a screen and back on it. And you can get to a point of the screen further in than before. So like here, if I fast travel out of the lookout point and back in, I'm going to get farther into the lookout point than I could by walking. You can walk exactly you don't walk, but you run in this game. You see me running. It's faster than walking. You can run 6 tiles in 1 second. Each tile takes 10 frames to run. So you kind of have to take into account how long distances are. Like what I do right here. Silver in this cutscene is told to walk and not run, which is why I run to the right, because that way I have to run an extra 10 frames. However, Silver has to walk in one less tile, which is a 16 frame is a walk speed animation. So it's just a small time save that can build up at a lot of points. There's another time save where you can do some running instead of walking things that I don't go for, but some people do. And so now we're kind of going to see what one thing in this game is. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much time like reopening and closing menus. So one thing you can do is you can kind of just get a ton of items and stockpile a ton of items and then use them all in one sequence, which you saw me there going from a random crowbar and a bunch of other household tools to getting a battery charged up to power this generator back here. So bringing back power to the Barrens will help us continue because we can talk to this computer. And with this computer, it'll put a document in our documents folder. So I have to actually open up my computer's real documents to open a notepad, and hidden on that notepad is the code to open this safe. Right there. And in this, we're going to get a book and a gas mask. The book isn't too relevant right now, but it's going to be an important item later in the run. Meanwhile, the gas mask will help us with getting to the northern part of the Barrens. Okay, please. So here we need the crowbar again. When we got a metal pipe in that bedroom, we smushed it into a crowbar. And we used it to open the box in the first place. We need it again here. I keep walking around items. Just small time losses from running extra tiles. But this factory is important. Get a sponge and gloves. Those gloves are actually really easy to forget sometimes, so it can be funny to see a racer miss them, especially within the past month. We've had a tournament of this game running, and we've seen several people forget gloves and just kind of be utterly confused when we needed them later. Which, speaking of which, I am gearing up to use those gloves along with a ton of other items in a upcoming sequence similar to when I made the generator battery. So I need to just warp here and here. And then we have a syringe, which we took from a hospital to fill with water from that pond. And then we're going to take our bottle from earlier to do that. And I don't want to fast travel, but I instead want to start a sequence here where I'm going to mix the smoke in the bottle and the water in the syringe. And then I'm going to use the gloves to not burn my hands while I pour that acid onto a sponge. So with this, we can clean off this robot. We'd originally learned this robot is here by powering on the generator. It would be active. And then we would talk to it, and it would be like, I'm not clean. We don't have to do it in that sequence, though, so we can talk to this robot for the first time when we already have the sponge. However, one thing is it is going to be kind of fried and not know where to go, even though we want it to take us to the tower. So what we need to do is we need to talk to this character from earlier, Silver, who will give us a special item, the Amber. The Amber will not only help the robot in remembering where to go, but it's going to be a key item later in the game, so we're going to keep it with us. I'm going to keep silent on why it's important for now, I guess, but it'll come into play. But we still do need it now. We're going to equip it on our way back to the robot, because using it will help the robot remember where to go. And now we're out of the first area of the game, so this is really like one of the only times I get a break from either just mashing or changing directions in the whole run is during these cutscenes. And even still, some of them want you to mash because why not, I guess? Like the dream sequences that you might remember, I had one earlier, you have to mash through the tiles and that. But a cutscene like the robot, I don't have to. And so now we're heading into the Glen. The second major area of the game. I think it's like the most popular between most players of this game. It's been a while since like an actual consensus was run but it's my personal favorite, and a lot of people seem to share that opinion. So, one of the first things we're going to do is we're actually going to use a super fast travel to skip a cutscene. Usually when you get to the forest here, you hear someone, like, call out, but we can skip that by doing this and just talking to the person directly. This is Calamus. Calamus is kind of worried because his sister went missing. So, that's kind of the first thing we're tasked with doing. Another thing we can be tasked with right now is if we talk to that robot, we learn that if we want to get closer to the tower and go to the refuge, the third major area, we need to sign a scroll. However, nobody has any writing utensils, so there's a second thing you can do. Again, I don't need to talk to NPCs in a lot of cases to actually get quests, but that one is an exception. Or Calamus is an exception just because it's an unavoidable cutscene. And so, throughout the ruins that we're in right now, you might have seen a few entrances blocked off by vines. We need to get rid of those vines in order to proceed, so I'm going to talk to this character right here, Maze. So, Maze is kind of dying, and I want to give you the sun, please. Maze is kind of dying and wants the sun to help her be peaceful, so we're going to give it to her, and you can already see the atmosphere getting a bit darker because we don't have our light with us, like our main source of light with us. But it's still going to be fairly bright soon because we're going to meet a very bright character. All we have to do first is just do a puzzle. So, if you remember, I talked to a computer in the Barrens to get a safe code. You're intended to talk to the computer in order to get the solution to this puzzle right here. However, unlike the safe code, this puzzle is not randomized. So, you can just do that. You can do the same movement every time. There are a few different routes to do this puzzle, some easier, some faster. Running around Alula is not one of the solutions to make it faster, but it happens sometimes. Alula is the sister of the person who was missing a sister at the beginning of the Glen, so we found her, which is good. But we're not going to return her quite yet because we still have more things to do around the Glen, such as this really interesting puzzle, I guess is a good way to put it. So we're going to go up to this shepherd right here, and they're going to tell us to herd rams. The way we herd rams is by making this sound. It's a good sound effect. But in all actuality, what this puzzle is it's kind of like if you played a Pokemon game and you've been into Victory Road, and you had to do a puzzle where you had to push boulders using strength. It's kind of like that. But every time you push a ram, it makes a really weird sound. But with it done, we get some ram wool, which we can trade in over here for an item that this guy doesn't even know what it is. But we do need it upcoming. And then the last thing we need to do is actually return Alula to Calamus. They're going to talk for a bit, and then they're going to talk to us. And we are going to accept an invitation to head to his house. Denying that invitation is actually horrible, but some people do it accidentally sometimes, because, as I mentioned earlier, the fastest thing to do, in terms of mashing, is constantly mashing both confirm and cancel. So if you're not careful, you can accidentally cancel some things and accept others, which you saw me do way earlier in the run when I was trying to say what my name was, and I said it wasn't my name. But, we get a special golden feather from the bird siblings. I almost said twins, but they're not twins. Calamus is, I think, like 4 years older. I'm not quite sure a lot of the characters' canon ages, but Calamus is definitely older. So here we're going to get our sun back from Maze. That sparkle on the ground is the only difference in this game between 100% and any percent. It is the only side quest that is actually counted towards 100% completion, but we don't need to do it, so I'm not going to pick it up because it's not a required item otherwise. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I did back very early in the Barrens and actually sleep. Nico needs to sleep once within each area, so I'm going to get that out of the way right at the very end. It's good to get it done at the end because you already need to fast travel to the gate to leave the Glen. So you can kind of chain that in, and it's faster than anything else. We have more dialogue after the dream. And what we're going to do is we need to talk to this robot. But we're going to take the feather that we got from the bird siblings and the dye that we got from the trader and actually make a pen so that we can sign the scroll. Because feather pens are totally something a child knows about. Nico has studied up on presidential documentaries. I don't know, probably saw like 20 videos about George Washington in school at their age. But we can make one, and we can sign the scroll. And make it to the refuge, which is the third major area. A very big city. Not actually that big, but this cutscene sure makes it look big. And we can see the tower there. So we are ever approaching the tower, which is, as mentioned earlier, our end goal of the run. So here, this is a weird screen. This is one of the few screens in the game where instead of the fast travel being activated as soon as you enter it, we actually have to complete a certain event in order to get the fast travel point to this screen. So we can't skip that cutscene there. But when we do get introduced to the lamplighter and notice that the elevator is broken, we are not only tasked with fixing the elevator, but we're given the ability to fast travel back to the elevator deck at any point. We don't want to do that quite yet, though, because I do need to go to the cafe using super fast travel in order to get a tin of coffee, and then I can go back to the elevator deck, and apparently Nico's already tired, so we're going to sleep yet again. You notice I'm kind of moving around the bed. It's kind of similar to the silver situation from earlier, where Nico has a set position from where they want to enter the bed when you interact with it. So I try and interact with the bed from the exact point that Nico steps into it, because I can run those tiles, but in the cutscene, Nico is told to walk. So they'll move slower. Also, despite this being an indoor area, I can fast travel out of it. That usually doesn't work. You're usually not allowed to fast travel indoors. It's like running with scissors. But that room is an exception because it's kind of weird. I think also it's been stated that they wanted to do something more with that area, but they just didn't get around to it. The devs and the community, the speedrunning community, are actually really, like, close to each other. Two of the devs, and, like, the one dev that isn't was, like, really the artist, mainly. So, like, the two that actually worked on dev more than anything else are actually speedrunners themselves, which is really cool. How do I say words? Gur, aka Cheezer, was a Hyperlight Drifter speedrunner, and Eliza plays Elder Scrolls Morrowind. So it's kind of really cool to have that, because we actually learn a lot about this game from them. And so we've almost fixed the elevator. The problem with the elevator was that the button panel was empty, and there's usually a magnetic button that you can hit to send you to the ground floor. So that actually causes a kind of difficult puzzle, because something you wouldn't expect to have to do is, once you cut out the word ground from a coffee tin, and then put the fridge magnets on the button that you just made, you actually have to go to this office and interact with a tape dispenser, which is something that a lot of people don't think to do on their first playthrough. But it gives use to the what's it called, the office in the run. I can't input codes. This code is actually not randomized. The previous code, like the safe code and the computer code and the Barons is randomized. However, this one is not. It is always in reference to the original freeware release of the game. This game is on Steam for $10, but an original version was released as a freeware game in 2014. To be exact, June 30th, 2014, and the elevator code is a reference to that date by being 6/30/14. So here we're in an elevator with the lamplighter, and we do the very civil act of conversing with a stranger in an elevator. It just so happens to be faster. You have the option to sit still and be silent. However, not only can you get more exposition by talking to him, but once you exhaust every possible dialogue option, the elevator automatically ends. And that's just faster than waiting the silence. Here, I'm going to go into the back alley quickly to set up a fast travel sequence. So I do want to super fast travel to the library, but what I'm actually going to do in that time is I'm going to use the back alley fast travel to go up to unlock Vendor Street, which will be important later. And speaking of important, here is... I mentioned the only difference between any percent and 100%. Here's the only difference between any percent and any percent glitchless. So, I've mentioned closing the game via sleeping through beds. I didn't mention what happens if you close the game normally. In that case, Nico gets kind of concerned because the world just kind of suddenly goes dark, and it starts a cutscene. If you start walking, you can actually close the game in the middle of walking. I need to equip the journal to give the George. So, you can play that cutscene in the middle of walking, and using that, you can start a cutscene over other cutscenes, which can be kind of useful as a break. But in this situation, when we do it behind the counter of that library desk, we actually not only skip a cutscene, but skip a cutscene that tells the game to move Nico backwards a tile. So we skip the game, forcing us out of the library without a library card, and basically just skip the entire refuge. We gave our journal to George because they can translate it, and the journal will tell us how to get into the tower, which is the final area of the game, and has been our goal since the beginning. We're told that we need 3 golden items, and although the amber and the feather count as 1, we still only have 2, so we get a dice from George to use as our 3rd item. So with that, we now have access to the tower. Since we don't have a library card still, I need to work around this cutscene here by doing the same skip backwards. If you close the game at a very specific time there, you have a chance to soft lock. So I didn't get that, fortunately. And I guess I can take this time to talk about George, the character you saw there. Seemed very gloomy. That's just one of 6 personalities you can get. George is, obviously, as the die, has 6 faces, and each one has a different personality, and it's random each time you play the game, which George face you're going to get. In this run, I got 3, which is the slowest one. It's 3 seconds lower than the fastest George, which is George 5. The main thing is George 3's text has a lot of ellipses, which create a special, pause for effect in text. So the text mashing just kind of has to pause a lot when you're doing George 3, but it's complete luck, so you just have to deal with it every time you want to do runs, that you might get an awful... Yeah, you might just get an awful George. So now we're in the tower. We're kind of in this weird place. We need to find a computer. I know where the computer is based on just memorizing a quick way to get there. And now the computer is going to talk to Nico directly for the first time this whole game. Which usually it talks to us, and it's going to here. So I have a lot of these text boxes. You might hear pop-up sounds like that. What this game actually... Thank you, game. The game is supposed to close on its own there. The game actually doesn't stop the fourth wall stuff, wherever you think it does. It also sends kind of Windows-type pop-up text boxes in order for a character to speak with you directly. And that character does not want Nico at the top of the tower right now. not to necessarily just be an antagonist, but for something that's going to come up shortly. So the reason I was even able to get out of bed at all was because I actually have a file open in the background. Usually there's a file like this placed in your documents and hinted at on your desktop background once you sleep in that bed. However, you can find it deeper in the game files and have it open at all times. So I have a file open right now known as Clover in the community. Its official file name is literally just like 5_.exe. So, suspicious. But it actually is the author, which in the lore of this game is the creator of the world, trying to communicate with you to not only kind of give humanity to the entity, the character trying to talk me out of bringing Nico to the top of the tower, but also explain why that's happening. And the truth is, in all actuality, that we can't do both things. We can't both save the world and return Nico home. We have to choose, which is why I have the bid war in place, because you're going to tell Nico this eventually in a later cutscene. But another thing it does, you might wonder how I'm remembering the way through this area, is that file will actually also guide you through this area. You have a clover in your inventory, and that clover, if you equip it and then line it up with a clover that shows up on that application, you can kind of see the right path to take. And at the end of the path are these tile puzzles, which are ridiculously difficult. Because if you have one misinput, they're kind of just, it's really hard to recover what you're doing without, like, erasing all of your previous tiles. Fortunately, the final puzzle went well, that light bulb went really well. But yeah, with mention of the endings that we have to choose coming up very shortly, I'm going to I'd like to end the bid war for the ending now. So, I'd like to know which ending I need to choose.
Yep, and it does look like Return Nico Home is what you will be doing.
Alright. Well, we have to get there first. So yeah, although the author explained it to us, Nico still doesn't know what's happening. The entity that I mentioned, though, does know that I know that Nico doesn't know. And so it's going to try and stop us here. I mentioned way earlier in the run, I rebound one key. That was, I rebound enter to not be a pause key, because you have to do a lot of mashing enter here for pop-up text boxes. And if you don't unbind enter, you'll just get a lot of pauses in the final part of the game. So here we have the final cutscene of the game where Nico is actually going to learn that we can't have both endings, because we were originally thought to believe that we would have both endings, that we would be able to both put the sun at the top and return Nico home. But in all actuality, to return Nico home, we're going to have to break this light bulb, which will just absolutely end the world in an instant. Time's going to come when I choose an ending, so get ready for that. It's in a few seconds. And time. Alright, so this is the ending you guys chose. I kind of want... I'm going to do something a bit weird. This ending is definitely a unique one, so I'm going to do something kind of silly to show what this ending likes to do, wherever it may be. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, so yeah, this ending gets a little wild, so I'm going to try my best to show off what it will do. So yeah, first off, there's that. A recent update to this game actually made that crash, like, way more severe. But yeah, once you get through the text, this is the final nail in the coffin for this ending. Or not nail in the coffin, but it's the final thing. When Nico actually returns home, this is what happens.